the producer said, well, would somebody like to come up and say a piece of poetry or sing a song, just to calm things down? Nobody else volunteered, so I said, oh. In everything I've done, Sound of Music, Blood Brothers, the R thing, R. There's no R in this at all. I mean, she is weird. Wonderful children, and we have 2 marvelous grandchildren as well. We still live together, but he has his own life and I have mine.
She was the girl with the golden voice, lighting up radio and TV screens long before streaming was even a thought. Petula Clark gave us timeless hits like Downtown, and her charm made her a star across the world. But behind the music, her life has been a fascinating mix of family, love, and resilience. Now, at 92, many wonder how she spends her days. Is she still performing? How is her health held up after all these years? What does her world look like today? Join us as we take a closer look at her journey and discover her life now. But first, let's go back to the very beginning. Petula Clark's early years. Petula Clark was born as Sally Clark on November 15, 1932, in Ewell, Surrey, England. Her parents, Doris and Leslie, both worked as nurses at Longgrove Hospital in Epsom. Her mother's family was Welsh, and her father was English. Petula's unusual first name had a fun story behind it. Her father created it by jokingly combining the names of 2 of his old girlfriends, Pet and Ulla. That light-hearted joke ended up giving her one of the most famous names in music. Clark spent much of her childhood in Aberconade, a village near Merthyr Tydfil in Wales, where her grandfather worked as a coal miner. Her very first audience came in 1939 when she sang at the Collier's Arms in Aberconade. She later remembered living just outside London during the Blitz. She spoke about watching battles in the sky and running with her sister to air raid shelters when the sirens sounded. At only 8 years old, she had her first connection with the BBC. Children were invited to record messages for family members who were serving in the forces. The recordings were held at the Criterion Theatre, which was underground and safe during air raids. When the sirens went off, some children grew upset. A call went out asking if anyone could sing to calm the room. Petula bravely stepped forward and sang "Mighty Like a Rose." The producers liked her voice so much they recorded her. That small moment became the start of a journey that would shape her entire life. As a child, Petula loved to sing in the chapel choir and had a special gift for mimicry. She often entertained her family and friends by copying stars like Vera Lynn, Carmen Miranda, and Sophie Tucker. Her father encouraged her love for performance. In 1944, he took her to see Flora Robson in a stage production of Mary Stuart. Petula later recalled the night, saying, "I made up my mind then and there I was going to be an actress. I wanted to be Ingrid Bergman more than anything else in the world." Still, her earliest performances weren't in acting, but in singing. In 1945, she sang with an orchestra at Bentl's department store in Kingston upon Thames. For her performance, she was rewarded with a tin of toffee and a gold wristwatch. That was the beginning of a career that would never stop growing. The first breakthrough. Petula's first big step into entertainment came when she was just 9 years old. In October 1942, she was attending a BBC radio broadcast with her father, hoping to send a message to her uncle, who was serving overseas. The broadcast was delayed because of an air raid. To keep the audience calm, the producer asked if anyone could perform. Once again, Petula stepped forward and sang "Mighty Like a Rose." The response was overwhelming. The audience loved her, and she was asked to repeat the song for the broadcast listeners. That one moment turned into hundreds of performances. Over time, she appeared in around 500 programs designed to lift the spirits of British troops during the war. She quickly earned the nickname the Singing Sweetheart. She even toured with another child star, Julie Andrews, across the United Kingdom. Her popularity was so great that she performed for King George VI, Winston Churchill, and military leader Bernard Montgomery. Soldiers even stuck her photos on their tanks for luck. Some called her Britain's Shirley Temple. Her fame kept growing, and new doors began to open. In 1944, while performing at the Royal Albert Hall in London, she was noticed by film director Maurice Elvey. He cast her as a 12-year-old orphan in his war drama Medal for the General. After that, she appeared in more films like Strawberry Roan, I Know Where I'm Going, London Town, and Here Come the Huggets. She also worked alongside Anthony Newley and vice versa, directed by Peter Ustinov and with Alec Guinness in the card. Her talent wasn't just limited to film and stage. In 1945, she was even featured in the comic magazine Radio Fun, billed as radio's merry mimic. But despite all the success, Petula felt that she had played child roles for too long and wanted to move into more serious work. That determination led her to television. In 1946, she appeared on a BBC variety show called Cabaret Cartoons. The performance was so successful that she was offered her own series. By 1950, she was hosting Pet's Parlor, which gave her even more recognition. Around this time, she also met Joe, Mr. Piano Henderson. He became her musical collaborator and romantic partner for about 10 years. In 1949, Henderson introduced her to record producer Alan A. Freeman, who, with Petula's father, formed Polygon Records. This gave Petula her first chance to record songs. Her very first release was Put Your Shoes On, Lucy. She also recorded duets with singer Benny Lee for Decca, finding her sound. Petula's career really started to shine in the 1950s. She had a string of hits in the UK, including The Little Shoemaker in 1954, Mallorca in 1955, Suddenly There's a Valley in 1955, and With All My Heart in 1956. The Little Shoemaker became an international hit and even reached #1 in Australia. This was just the beginning of her global success. Polygon Records, the label her family had invested in, was later sold to Nixa Records in 1955, which was part of Pi Records. This meant Petula was now officially signed to Pi, a label she stayed with until the early 1970s. She also showed an interest in supporting new talent. She encouraged Joe Henderson to record his own music, and he went on to have 5 chart hits of his own between 1955 and 1960. But Petula herself wasn't slowing down. She was looking beyond the UK and soon set her sights on Europe. In 1957, she was invited to perform at the Paris Olympia, one of the most famous venues in France. She went there feeling nervous, especially since she had a bad cold. But the performance was a success and the audience loved her. The very next day, she was invited to Vogue Records, where she met her future husband, Claude Wolfe. She was instantly attracted to him, and when she was told she'd be working with him if she signed, she agreed. That decision not only shaped her career, but also her personal life. Becoming a European star. By 1960, Petula was touring France and Belgium with singer Sacha Distel, who remained her close friend for life. She began recording in French, German, Italian, and Spanish, expanding her reach across Europe. Even while building her career in France, she continued to score hits in the UK. In 1961, her song Sailor hit #1 in Britain, followed by Romeo and My Friend the Sea, both of which landed in the top 10 that same year. Romeo even sold over 1 million copies and won her a gold disc from the Recording Industry Association of America. In France, she recorded Ya Ya Twist, a French version of Lee Dorsey's song Ya Ya. It became the only twist song by a woman to find major success. Another big hit was Chariot, which many later knew as I Will Follow Him. Petula's songs were also recorded in German and Italian and found huge audiences. She even performed songs by Serge Gainsbourg, which became strong sellers. During this time, Petula also received a gift that few artists ever did. Jacques Brel gave her one of his own songs, Un Enfant. She performed it during their tour together, and a live version of the song went on to chart in Canada. Her talents extended beyond singing, too. In 1963, she wrote the soundtrack for the French crime film A Couteau Tirez and appeared in a cameo role as herself. She went on to compose scores for other films, including Entre Ciel et Mer in 1963, Rêves d'Enfant in 1964, La Bande à Babel in 1966, and even Pétain in 1989. Decades later, some of these themes were released on a CD called In Her Own Right. Her wide-ranging career made her a true international star. She was honored 3 times on the popular show This Is Your Life, in 1964, 1975, and 1996, something very few performers have ever achieved. Her journey had started in wartime Britain, but by the 1960s, she had become one of Europe's most beloved entertainers, and this was only the beginning of the legendary career she would carry for decades. The Downtown Breakthrough. By 1964, Petula Clark's career in Britain had started to slow down. She was still recording, but the spark was missing. That changed when Tony Hatch, a composer and arranger, came to see her in Paris. He brought along several songs, but none caught her interest. Then, almost out of desperation, he played a few chords of a tune he had started while visiting New York City. The melody was catchy, and Petula immediately told him that if the lyrics matched the tune, she wanted it as her next single. That song became Downtown. Neither of them imagined how big it would become. Released at the end of 1964 in several languages, Downtown exploded across the world. It was a hit in the UK, France, the Netherlands, Germany, Australia, Italy, Japan, India, and even Rhodesia. When Warner Brothers executive Joe Smith heard it in London, he quickly bought the rights for the US. The gamble paid off. In January 1965, Downtown reached #1 in America, selling over 3 million copies there alone. The song also gave Petula her first Grammy for Best Rock and Roll Recording. More importantly, it gave her a brand new identity, not just as a singer in Europe, but as an international superstar. This success was only the beginning, because right after Downtown came a flood of hits that made her one of the most recognized singers of the 1960s. Hits, fame, and controversy. Following the success of Downtown, Petula delivered one hit after another in the U.S. songs like I Know a Place, My Love, A Sign of the Times, I Couldn't Live Without Your Love, Don't Sleep in the Subway, and This Is My Song filled the airwaves. My Love even gave her a second #1 record in America. She was now a household name. She won a Grammy for I Know a Place, and decades later, Downtown was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame. Along with the records came television fame. Petula became a familiar face on American variety shows hosted by Ed Sullivan and Dean Martin. She appeared on Hullabaloo, Shindig, and the Hollywood Palace. She was invited to musical specials and even hosted her own. But one of those shows brought her into the center of a cultural storm. In 1968, NBC asked her to host a television special. One of her guests was Harry Belafonte. Together they sang her anti-war song, On the Path of Glory. During the performance, Petula reached out and touched Belafonte's arm. A sponsor for the show panicked, fearing backlash in the South over a white woman touching a black man on TV. He demanded that the scene be replaced with a safer version, but Petula and her husband, Claude Wolfe, who was producing the show, refused. They destroyed all other takes and delivered the final cut with the moment intact. The sponsor lost his job, and the special aired just 4 days after Martin Luther King Jr. was killed. The ratings were huge, and the critics praised it. The moment is still remembered as a bold stand on live television. And for Petula, it showed she was not only a singer, but also a woman unafraid to stand her ground. On stage and screen. During the late 1960s, Petula wasn't just ruling the charts. She was also moving into film and stage. She starred with Fred Astaire in Finian's Rainbow in 1968, a role that won her a Golden Globe nomination. The next year, she starred opposite Peter O'Toole in Goodbye, Mr. Chips, another musical that brought her wide attention. At the same time, she kept touring across the United States, performing in legendary supper clubs like the Copacabana in New York and the Coconut Grove in Los Angeles. She was also known for encouraging young talent. In 1968, she brought French composer Michel Colombier to America and introduced him to Herb Alpert. Colombier later became famous for his work with artists like Prince. Richard Carpenter also credited Petula for introducing him and his sister Karen to Alpert, which helped launch the Carpenter's career. Petula had friendships with many stars, including Elvis Presley. She later laughed about how Elvis flirted with both her and Karen Carpenter backstage, saying, "He didn't have us exactly, but he had a darned good try. Not going to talk about that anymore." She was also present in history-making moments. While performing in Montreal in 1969, she was struggling with hecklers who didn't like her switching between English and French. She asked John Lennon for advice and ended up joining him and Yoko Ono during their famous bed-in protest. That's how Petula's voice ended up as one of the backing singers on Lennon's anthem Give Peace a Chance. On November 15, 1969, her concert An Evening with Petula became the very first color broadcast on BBC One. It was yet another first in her long list of achievements, proving that her career was filled with history-making milestones, reinvention, and longevity. The 1970s brought more music, though her focus began to shift. She released singles like Melody Man, The Song of My Life, and Loving Arms. but she also scaled back to spend more time with her family. She became a familiar face on television shows and even made a guest appearance on The Muppet Show. In 1981, she returned to the stage in a big way, playing Maria von Trapp in The Sound of Music in London. Maria herself called Petula the best Maria ever. The show broke records, and Petula extended her run to meet demand. She was even nominated for a Laurence Olivier Award for Best Actress in a Musical. In 1983, she moved audiences at the Royal Albert Hall with a heartfelt performance of For All We Know in tribute to her friend Karen Carpenter, who had died just 2 days before. Petula later starred in Candida and wrote music for the show Someone Like You. She appeared on Broadway in Blood Brothers in 1993 and took on the iconic role of Norma Desmond in Sunset Boulevard, performing it over 2,500 times. She continued recording, too, with highlights like the disco remix Downtown 88, which returned her to the UK Top 10. She was recognized for her contributions when Queen Elizabeth II made her a Commander of the Order of the British Empire in 1998. Even in her later years, she refused to slow down. She toured the world, recorded new albums, and made documentaries. She performed at the Montreux Jazz Festival, hosted a PBS special, and even returned to the West End stage in Mary Poppins as the Bird Woman in 2019. In 2023, she appeared on BBC's Old Friends concert singing I'm Still Here. But what about her personal life? Matters of the heart. In 1955, Petula Clark was romantically linked with Joe Mr. Piano Henderson. The relationship created a storm of speculation, with many expecting the two to marry. They worked closely together, and fans began to see them as a pair both in music and in life. But fame was starting to weigh on their relationship. Petula's career in France was only just beginning, and Henderson reportedly did not want to become known as Mr. Petula Clark. In time, he decided to walk away. Although the romance ended, the two stayed friends and even continued to collaborate. Their final project together was the BBC radio series Pet and Mr. Piano, a symbolic farewell to their professional bond. Years later, Henderson wrote a ballad about their breakup titled There's Nothing More to Say. Petula included it on her LP In Other Words, marking the end of that chapter. Life soon introduced her to new friends in the entertainment world. In 1967, she attended her close friend Charles Aznavour's wedding in Las Vegas as a witness, alongside Sammy Davis Jr. Just a decade earlier, in October 1957, her professional path had taken an important turn at the Paris Olympia. She performed for Musicorama, a live radio show, and was soon invited to Vogue Records. It was there she met Claude Wolff, a young publicist. She was immediately attracted to him, and when she was told that Wolff would work with her if she signed to record in French, she accepted. Their partnership quickly grew into romance. In June 1961, Petula and Claude married, beginning a family that would eventually include 2 daughters and a son. Later, they welcomed 2 grandchildren. For Petula, family life was meaningful but also challenging. She admitted later that her busy schedule kept her away from her children during their younger years, and she regretted not being as close to them as she wished. In 2013, she openly shared that her relationship with Wolff was no longer romantic. Still, their history remained deep and lasting. Sadly, Wolff passed away on March 20, 2024, closing an important chapter of her personal life. Choices, beliefs, and home. Petula Clark's personal life also reflected her thoughts about politics and belonging. In 1979, after Margaret Thatcher became Britain's first female prime minister, Petula sent her a telegram of congratulations. She wrote, "Felicitations, so happy for you and for Britain." That same year, she even performed at a Young Conservatives rally. However, her views were never bound to one side. In 2002, she attended a fundraiser for Tony Blair, the Labour Prime Minister, showing that her support could cross political lines. Through it all, her true sense of belonging remained outside of politics and in her home life. Since the 1960s, Petula made Geneva, Switzerland, her permanent residence. The peaceful surroundings gave her balance while she continued to perform around the world. Geneva also provided her with family time as she lived there with her husband, children, and later her grandchildren. She also kept a chalet in the French Alps where she loved to ski, and a place in London's Chelsea. These homes reflected her lifestyle, rooted in Europe but connected to the world. Her family and homes gave her stability as her career continued to evolve, but her health would soon bring its own challenges and dramatic moments. Health and resilience. Though Petula Clark lived an active and healthy life, she was no stranger to medical scares. In an interview with the Daily Mail, she described her worst health crisis as a young woman. At 21, she needed an emergency operation to remove her appendix. The surgery was supposed to solve the problem, but instead it led to even greater pain. Petula recalled, "I had my appendix out as an emergency op at 21. I was in great pain afterwards, and it kept getting worse. 6 months later, they had to cut me open again and found I'd developed internal adhesions around the scar tissue, which had gone gangrenous. Doctors removed part of her intestine during the urgent procedure. For her parents, the experience was terrifying." She remembered, "My parents were beside themselves, but I've never had any problems there since. There's just a faded couple of inches of scar." The ordeal could have left her with lasting health issues, but she managed to recover fully. Since then, she has remained remarkably healthy. At the age of 89, she was still describing herself as active and strong. Living in Geneva helped her maintain her fitness. She admitted she often ran upstairs and enjoyed the physical activity in her mountain chalet. She laughed that she had no problems with dodgy knees. She explained that she never relied on many pills or vitamins, and had only once in her life followed a diet, the Atkins diet, which she tried to lose baby weight after giving birth. Despite the danger she faced at 21, Petula Clark emerged stronger. The faded scar was a reminder of the risk, but her life afterwards was filled with energy and resilience. Her story showed not just her talent, but her determination to keep moving forward, whether in her career or her health. The song that changed everything. In January 1965, Petula Clark's song Downtown hit #1 on the U.S. charts. The tune was about escaping daily worries by heading into the city and finding joy in the lights and the noise. It won her a Grammy Award for Best Rock and Roll Recording and went on to appear in TV shows like Lost and Seinfeld, as well as films like Girl Interrupted. But the story of how it began was simple. Petula was living in Paris with her French husband at the time. She was already popular in Europe, singing in French, Italian, and German. Then Tony Hatch, a young producer at Pi Records in London, came to see her. He told her she should be recording in English too. At first, she was not convinced. She said, "I'm fine the way I am, but we have to find the right song." Hatch sat at the piano and began to play a tune he had just started writing. Petula recalled, "I came back into the room with the tea and I said, 'That is one great tune. Can you write a lyric up to the standard of the music?' He said, 'I will have a damn good try.' I said, 'Well, then I'll do it.'" 2 weeks later, they recorded Downtown in London. Neither of them expected the song to explode the way it did. Swept into the spotlight. The release of Downtown was like a storm. It quickly became a hit not only in the U.S., but also in Canada, Australia, and across the world. Petula described how unprepared they were for its success. "We didn't realize we'd recorded a monster. Suddenly, it was a hit all over the world. The timing was perfect. The Beatles had already opened doors for British performers in America, and Petula was pulled into what became known as the British invasion. Soon, shows like The Ed Sullivan Show were begging her to appear. The first time she sang Downtown in America was in New York. She had just arrived from Paris and was completely jet-lagged. There was no rehearsal. She walked straight onto the stage in front of a live audience and orchestra. To make it more nerve-wracking, the orchestra started playing the song too fast, but the audience didn't mind. Petula remembered, "People just stood up and cheered when I walked on the stage." That moment marked the beginning of her love affair with American audiences. But success also came with challenges. She already had contracts in Europe and a busy career there. Now America was calling not just for New York, but for Las Vegas and Los Angeles too. She also had 2 young children at home. She explained, "It actually complicated my life quite a lot, but in a rather marvelous way." Despite the stress, she believed travel was a great education for her children. They grew up with memories of a life filled with experiences most kids never have. Stories behind the song. As the years passed, Downtown became more than just a hit record. It became part of people's lives. Petula shared how fans often told her personal stories about what the song meant to them. Some soldiers fighting in Vietnam told her, "Your song helped us, gave us courage to go on." She admitted that when you first record a song, you never know how deeply it will touch people. Every listener takes something different from it. For some, it was a song of escape, a way to forget their worries. For others, it became tied to important memories. That power is what kept the song alive for decades. Petula herself said she never expected it to have such reach. At the time, she was simply focused on singing well and doing her job. But over time, she came to understand that music could carry hope and comfort far beyond the recording studio. And because she had already built a career in several languages, her music traveled even further. She explained, "I am English, but I fell in love with a Frenchman. So I went to live in France. I became a star in France, which meant that I had to sing in French. Then the Italians wanted me to sing in Italian, and then in German. Little by little, it just sort of spread. And I love singing in Italian. Let's face it, it is the language of opera." Her ability to sing in many languages made her unique, and it helped her reach audiences all over the world. Still singing today. Even into her later years, Petula Clark never stopped performing. In her 80s, she was still touring the United States, traveling and even sleeping on a tour bus. When asked why she kept going, she answered honestly, "I just love doing it. That's really the reason. It's hard for me to imagine my life without it." For her, performing was not just work. It was joy, connection, and even something spiritual. She explained, "There's nothing quite like that contact between what's happening on stage and what's happening in the audience. There's a kind of communion that happens, and it's almost a spiritual experience." Even at 92, she was still planning her next big moment. She teased that a London concert was in the works, with a full orchestra and a live audience. For her, it was still thrilling. 60 years after Downtown changed her life, Petula Clark was proving that the love for music and performance never leaves you. Her voice, her songs, and her story had carried across generations. And while the world first knew her for one song, her passion for singing kept her on stage for decades with no signs of slowing down. What's your favorite Petula Clark song? Is it Downtown or one of her other classics? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more incredible stories from Hollywood's fascinating history. See you next time.